I always said if my marriage died, it'd die of boredom. Turns out it was killed by a BMW and a tube of cherry lipstick I'd never bought my wife. My name's Nick Foster, and I'm 39 years old with the kind of job that makes people's eyes glaze over at parties. IT support for a mid-sized insurance company in Minneapolis. Not exactly thrilling, but it pays the bills and keeps me sharp with technology. Skills that would prove more useful than I ever imagined. The first crack in my world appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. I was making coffee when Amber, my wife of 12 years, rushed past me wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Black, expensive looking. Definitely not from Target, where she usually shopped. New dress? I asked, trying to sound casual. Oh, this old thing? I've had it forever, she said, without looking at me. Fumbling with her phone. The lie came so easily it made my stomach twist. Amber worked at Pinnacle Marketing, an upscale agency downtown, where she'd been climbing the ladder for the past 3 years. Lately, she'd been working later and later, coming home with stories about networking events and client dinners that always seemed to exclude spouses. Don't wait up tonight, she said, grabbing her keys. Big presentation tomorrow. The team's working late. After she left, I found myself staring at the coffee mug in my hands, a gift from our 5th anniversary that read, World's Best Husband. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, I was fixing dinner when my phone buzzed. A text from our neighbor, Mrs. Palmer, the 70-year-old retired teacher who knew everyone's business on our block. Saw Amber getting into a fancy car with a man today. Wasn't you. Just thought you should know. My hands went cold. I called Amber. Hey, babe, how's the presentation prep going? Oh, boring stuff. Charts and numbers. I'll probably be here until midnight. Through the phone, I could hear music. Not office music, restaurant music. The kind with a jazz saxophone that played at expensive places downtown. Sounds rough. Which conference room are you using? A pause. Too long. The big one. On the 3rd floor. Amber's office only had 2 floors. I hung up and sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Wedding photos on the refrigerator. Her coffee mug next to mine in the sink. The mortgage payment schedule stuck to the bulletin board. 3 days later, everything changed. I was working from home when I realized my laptop was missing. Not just misplaced, gone. It had been sitting on my desk the night before, and now there was just an empty space where it should have been. Amber, have you seen my laptop? She was getting ready for work, applying that cherry lipstick in the hallway mirror. Why would I know where your stuff is? Maybe you should keep track of your things better. There was something in her tone, a smugness that made my skin crawl. After she left, I did what any IT guy would do. I logged into the tracking software I'd installed on all our devices for security purposes. The laptop was pinging from an address across town, an address I didn't recognize. I called the police. Officer Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who took notes while I explained the situation. Your laptop was stolen from your home office, and you can track it to this address? That's right. The GPS shows it has been there since yesterday evening. She studied the address. This is a residential area. You know anyone who lives over there? No, never been to that part of town. What followed was like something out of a cop show. Officer Martinez and her partner knocked on the door of a modern townhouse while I waited in their patrol car. Through the window, I watched a man in his early 40s answer the door, tall, well-dressed, driving a BMW parked in the driveway. The man's name was Brent Calloway, and he worked at Pinnacle Marketing, the same company as my wife. Funny coincidence, Officer Martinez said when she returned to the car with my laptop. Mr. Calloway says he has no idea how your computer ended up in his house. Claims maybe someone broke in and left it there. Someone broke into his house to leave a laptop? That's what he said. Seemed pretty nervous about it, though, kept asking if we were going to dust for fingerprints. I took my laptop home and immediately checked its history. Someone had been using it to browse jewelry websites, expensive restaurants, and apartment listings in the trendy part of downtown. The kind of places Amber and I could never afford on our combined salaries. But Brent Calloway could. That night, I waited up for Amber. She came home at 11:30, claiming she'd been at a team-building dinner. Funny thing happened today, I said, watching her reaction carefully. My laptop was stolen. She froze for just a moment. So brief, I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. That's terrible. Did you call the police? I did. They found it at some guy's house. Guy named Brent Calloway. You know him? The color drained from her face. Brent, he's just a coworker. I barely know him. Weird that my laptop ended up at his place, don't you think? Maybe maybe someone broke into both houses like a serial burglar or something? I almost laughed. The lie was so desperate, so poorly constructed. This from a woman who made her living crafting marketing campaigns. You know what's really weird, Amber? My laptop has a security feature that takes photos through the webcam when someone tries to access it. Should be interesting to see who is using it. This was a complete bluff. My laptop had no such feature. But Amber didn't know that. She broke down completely. Okay, it was me. I took it to Brent's place. We were working on a presentation together, and I needed to show him some files. But nothing happened, Nick. I swear, nothing happened. You took my personal laptop to another man's house without asking me? It was just work stuff. You're making this into something it's not. Then why did you lie about knowing him? She started crying then. Big, dramatic tears that might have worked on me a year ago. Because I knew you'd react like this. You're so jealous and suspicious about everything. I was recording this conversation on my phone, though she didn't know it. In Minnesota, you only need one party's consent to record a conversation, and I was definitely consenting. So let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice calm. You stole my laptop, lied to the police about knowing Brent, lied to me about working late, and now you're saying I'm the problem for being suspicious? I didn't steal it, I just borrowed it. Without asking. And then you let me call the police and file a report, knowing exactly where it was. She had no answer for that. Here's what's going to happen, Amber. You're going to tell me the truth, all of it, right now. And she did. The confession that followed was like watching our marriage die in real time. Amber and Brent had been having an affair for 4 months. It started at an office Christmas party where they'd both had too much to drink. What began as flirting escalated to kissing, then to regular meetings at his place during her supposed late nights at work. It just happened, Nick. I didn't plan it. 4 months isn't something that just happens. 4 months is a relationship. She was sitting on our couch, tissues scattered around her like confetti, mascara running down her cheeks. You don't understand. Things have been so boring between us. Brent makes me feel alive again. So alive that you had to steal my laptop to impress him? He wanted to see some of my old marketing portfolios. They were saved on your computer from when I used it last year. I was going to bring it back the same night, but then we got distracted. The image of my wife and her lover using my laptop while they fooled around in his expensive townhouse made me physically sick. What else, Amber? What else have you lied about? Nothing, I swear, this is it. But I could see in her eyes that there was more. There's always more. Over the next few days, I did what I do best. I investigated, not illegally, not through hacking or spying, but through careful observation and the kind of digital detective work that comes naturally to someone in IT. I started by looking at our joint bank account. There were charges I didn't recognize, expensive restaurants, a hotel downtown, even a jewelry store purchase for $300. When I asked Amber about it, she claimed she'd bought me a surprise gift. Where is it? I'm saving it for your birthday. My birthday was 8 months away. I called the jewelry store. They don't typically give out purchase information, but I explained that I was trying to track down a fraudulent charge on my account. The helpful clerk told me that the purchase was for a men's watch, and it had been gift-wrapped and picked up the same day. Brent started wearing a new watch to work the following week. I knew this because I'd started doing something I never thought I'd do. I began following my wife, not stalking, nothing illegal or creepy. But when she said she was working late, I'd drive by her office building. When she claimed to be at networking events, I'd check the company's social media pages to see if any events were actually happening. She was lying about everything. The breaking point came 2 weeks after the laptop incident. Amber announced she was going to a weekend marketing conference in Chicago. It's a great opportunity for networking. Some of the biggest names in the industry will be there. She showed me the conference website on her phone, complete with speaker schedules and event listings. It looked legitimate. But I'm an IT guy, and I know how easy it is to create fake websites. I did a reverse image search on the conference photos. They were stock images from a web design template. The conference didn't exist. While Amber was supposedly in Chicago learning about digital marketing trends, I drove past Brent's house. Her car was in his driveway. I sat in my car across the street watching the windows of his townhouse. and realized that my marriage wasn't just over. It had been over for months. I'd been living with a stranger who lied as easily as breathing and thought I was too stupid to notice. That's when I decided to stop being stupid. I called my friend Don, who worked at a car dealership and had been through his own messy divorce 3 years earlier. She's cheating, I told him over beers at Murphy's Tavern, our usual spot. Has been for months. Don whistled low. You sure? Caught them red-handed. Well, caught her lying red-handed multiple times. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to kick down his door and beat the hell out of both of them. Don't do that, man. That's how you end up in jail while they ride off into the sunset together. He was right, of course. But the anger was eating me alive. 12 years of marriage, and she'd thrown it away for a guy with a fancy car and a bigger paycheck. You know what the worst part is? I said, staring into my beer. Her friends probably know. They've probably been laughing about it for months. Don nodded grimly. That's how it usually works. The spouse is always the last to know. I thought about Amber's friends, Gina and Lacey, who came over for wine nights and always seemed to have inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way they'd smile at each other when I left the room. The way conversations stopped when I walked in. They all knew, I said, and it wasn't a question. Probably, but hey, now you know too. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I finished my beer and looked at Don. I'm going to make sure everyone knows, starting with Brent's ex-wife. Don raised an eyebrow. He's divorced? Divorced last year. And I'm betting she'd be very interested to hear that her ex-husband is up to his old tricks again. Finding Sam Calloway wasn't hard. Social media makes everyone easy to find if you know where to look. She worked as a nurse at the university hospital and, based on her Facebook posts, was still pretty bitter about her divorce. I sent her a message. Hi, Sam. You don't know me, but I think we have something in common. My wife is having an affair with your ex-husband. Would you be interested in comparing notes? She called me within an hour. Are you serious? She said without preamble. Brent is cheating again? Afraid so, with my wife, Amber. They work together at Pinnacle Marketing. Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course they do. That's exactly how it happened with us. He had an affair with a coworker, then left me for her. Then he cheated on her with someone else. It's a pattern. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. Hard doesn't begin to cover it. But you know what? I'm not surprised. Brent's a narcissist who can't keep his pants zipped. Your wife is just the latest in a long line. We met for coffee the next day, and Sam filled in the gaps of Brent's history. He'd been married twice before her, both marriages ending due to infidelity. He had a gambling problem that he hid well, owed money to several people, and was currently being sued by his previous landlord for property damage. He's good at playing the successful businessman, Sam said, stirring her latte. But it's all an act. The BMW is leased, the townhouse is rented, and half his designer clothes come from outlet stores. He's basically a well-dressed fraud. Does he know that you know all this about him? Oh, he knows I know. That's why he's been trying to get me to sign a non-disclosure agreement as part of our divorce settlement. He doesn't want his new girlfriends to find out what kind of man he really is. I smiled for the first time in weeks. What if I told you there was a way to make sure everyone found out? Sam leaned forward, interested. I'm listening. That's when I started planning my revenge. The first rule of revenge is patience. The second rule is documentation. As an IT professional, I was well equipped for both. I started by consulting with a divorce attorney, not to file papers yet, but to understand my legal options and limitations. Margaret Chen was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in cases involving infidelity. The good news is that Minnesota is a no-fault divorce state, so proving cheating won't affect the divorce proceedings, she explained. The bad news is that it also won't help you get a bigger settlement. I'm not interested in taking her money, I said. I want something else. What's that? I want everyone to know what she did. Her friends, her coworkers, her family. I want her to face the consequences of her choices. Margaret raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. Most of my clients want to keep things quiet. Most of your clients weren't humiliated for months while their spouse carried on an affair behind their back. Fair enough, but be careful, Nick. Revenge has a way of backfiring. Make sure whatever you do is legal and won't come back to hurt you in the divorce proceedings. I assured her that everything I planned was completely legal. Morally questionable, perhaps, but legal. My first move was subtle. I started paying attention to Amber's work schedule and social media posts, looking for inconsistencies I could exploit. It didn't take long to find them. The following week, Amber announced she was working late again. Big client presentation on Friday. The whole team is staying to rehearse. I waited until she left, then called Pinnacle Marketing's main number. Hi, this is Nick Foster, Amber Foster's husband. She left her phone at home and asked me to call and let her know she'll be a few minutes late to the team meeting tonight. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, but there's no team meeting scheduled for tonight. Most of the staff left hours ago. Oh, that's strange. Maybe I misunderstood. Could you transfer me to Brent Calloway's line? Maybe he knows about the meeting. Mr. Calloway left early today, said he had a dinner appointment. Bingo. I thanked the receptionist and hung up, then drove to Brent's neighborhood. Sure enough, Amber's car was parked around the corner from his townhouse, close enough to walk, far enough away to avoid being seen by neighbors. Instead of confronting them, I took photos, not of them together, which would have required trespassing, but of her car parked in his neighborhood at a time when she was supposedly at work. Evidence for later. Then I went home and started phase 2 of my plan. I created a fake email account and sent a message to Pinnacle Marketing's HR department. I'm concerned about inappropriate workplace relationships affecting company morale. You might want to look into the relationship between Amber Foster and Brent Calloway. They've been seen together outside of work frequently, and it's creating tension among other employees. The email was anonymous and carefully worded to avoid making any direct accusations. I was simply expressing concern and suggesting they look into the situation. Completely legal. The next day, Amber came home in a foul mood. How was work? I asked innocently. Terrible. HR called me in for some ridiculous meeting about workplace relationships. Apparently someone made a complaint. What kind of complaint? Some anonymous coward claimed I was having an inappropriate relationship with a coworker. Can you believe that? I made sympathetic noises while internally celebrating. That's awful. What did you tell them? The truth, obviously, that it's completely false and probably just office gossip from someone who's jealous of my success. Did they believe you? I think so, but they said they're going to be monitoring the situation. It's so humiliating. Over the next few days, I watched Amber become increasingly paranoid about her behavior at work. She stopped mentioning Brent entirely and was careful not to work late too often. But she was still seeing him. She was just being more careful about it. That's when I decided to escalate things. I reached out to Sam Calloway again. Remember how you said Brent owes money to people? Yeah, he's got gambling debts all over town. Why? I have an idea. What if those people knew where to find him on a regular basis? Sam was quiet for a moment. You want to give his creditors his home address? He's listed in the phone book, so it's public information. I'm just thinking that if someone happened to mention that he's usually home on Tuesday evenings around 8 o'clock, when he's with your wife, hypothetically speaking. Sam laughed. You're devious. I like that. Give me a few phone numbers. The following Tuesday, Amber announced she was going to a networking event downtown. I knew she was really going to Brent's place because I'd started tracking her patterns. At 8:15 p.m., I drove past his townhouse. There were 2 cars I didn't recognize parked outside, along with Amber's vehicle around the corner. Through the window, I could see shadows moving around inside, more than just 2 people. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for the tip. Found him. I never found out exactly what happened that night, but Amber came home 2 hours earlier than usual, shaking and upset. How was the networking event? I asked. It was cut short. Some kind of emergency. She went straight to bed without saying another word. The next day, I got a call from Sam. I heard through the grapevine that Brent had some unexpected visitors last night. Apparently, he's been avoiding certain people for months, and they finally caught up with him. Anyone hurt? Just his pride and his wallet. But I think he got the message about paying his debts on time. I felt a twinge of guilt about involving dangerous people in my revenge plot, but then I remembered the months of lies and humiliation, and the guilt faded. Phase 1 complete, I told myself. Time for phase 2. The beauty of revenge is that it works best when your targets don't realize they're being targeted. Amber and Brent thought they were dealing with random workplace gossip and unrelated personal problems. They had no idea I was orchestrating everything. My next move required more direct action. I knew from Sam that Brent was obsessive about his BMW. He washed it twice a week, parked it far from other cars to avoid dings, and had custom leather seat covers that cost more than my monthly salary. On a Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to a hardware store in a different part of town. I paid cash for a bag of sugar, a small funnel, and a tire pressure gauge. Then I waited. Brent's routine was predictable. Every Wednesday, he went to lunch at an upscale bistro downtown, the same place where I'd heard the jazz music in the background when I called Amber that first night. He'd be gone for exactly 90 minutes. At 12:30 p.m., I parked across the street from Pinnacle Marketing and watched Brent leave in his BM. Then I walked over to his car. I didn't slash his tires or break his windows. That would have been vandalism. Instead, I used the tire pressure gauge to let air out of his front tire. Not enough to make it flat, just enough to make it soft and unsafe to drive. Then I waited in my car. Brent returned from lunch at 2 p.m. sharp. I watched him walk around his car, notice the tire, and pull out his phone to call for roadside assistance. While he was distracted, I drove away. That evening, Amber was unusually quiet during dinner. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff. Brent had car trouble today and missed an important client meeting. Everyone's stressed about it." "That's too bad. What kind of car trouble?" "Flat tire or something. He thinks someone might have vandalized it, but there's no proof." I made sympathetic noises while planning my next move. The tire incident was just a warm-up. My real target was Brent's reputation. I knew from Amber's complaints that Brent was up for a promotion at Pinnacle Marketing. He was competing with 2 other candidates for a senior management position, and the decision would be made within the next month. I also knew from Sam that Brent had lied on his resume about his educational background. He claimed to have an MBA from Northwestern, but he'd actually dropped out after 1 semester. Verifying this information was easy. Northwestern keeps detailed alumni records, and a simple phone call to their registrar's office confirmed that Brent Calloway had never graduated from their MBA program. I printed out the official transcript request form, filled it out with Brent's information, and mailed it to Pinnacle Marketing's HR department with a note. "Thought you might want to verify this information as part of the promotion review process." The note was typed, not handwritten, and sent from a generic post office box I'd rented under a fake name. Completely untraceable. Within a week, Brent was called into HR for another meeting. This time, it wasn't about workplace relationships. It was about falsifying his educational credentials. Amber came home that night looking like she'd seen a ghost. "Bad day at work again?" I asked. "Brent's in serious trouble. Someone reported that he lied about having an MBA. HR is doing a full investigation." "Wow, that's serious. Could he get fired?" "Probably. And even if he doesn't, he's definitely not getting the promotion." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Brent's career was starting to crumble, and he had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. But I wasn't done yet. The next phase of my plan required help from an unexpected source: Amber's friends. Gina and Lacey had been Amber's closest friends for years, and I was certain they knew about the affair. They were the type of women who thrived on gossip and drama, always whispering about other people's relationships and personal problems. I decided to give them something really juicy to gossip about. I created another fake email account and sent messages to both of them. "You might want to ask Amber about her relationship with Brent Calloway. I think you'll find it very interesting." The emails were sent from a generic account with no identifying information, but I made sure to include just enough detail to make them curious without being specific enough to trace back to me. The results were immediate and dramatic. That weekend, Gina and Lacey came over for their usual wine night. I made myself scarce, claiming I had work to catch up on, but I could hear their voices through the walls. The conversation started normally, but within an hour it had turned heated. I couldn't make out specific words, but I could hear Amber's voice getting higher and more defensive while her friends became increasingly aggressive. The wine night ended early, with Gina and Lacey leaving in a huff. Amber came upstairs crying. "What happened?" I asked, pretending concern. "My friends are being horrible. They're accusing me of having an affair with Brent." "That's ridiculous. Why would they think that?" "Someone sent them anonymous emails suggesting it. They confronted me about it, and when I denied it, they said I was lying. They claim they've suspected it for months." I held her while she cried, feeling like the world's biggest hypocrite. But I also felt vindicated. Her friends had suspected the affair and said nothing to me. They'd been complicit in my humiliation. "I'm sure they'll come around," I said. "Friends sometimes say things they don't mean when they're upset." But Gina and Lacey didn't come around. Over the next few weeks, they stopped calling Amber, stopped inviting her to their social events, and even unfriended her on social media. Amber was devastated by the loss of her closest friendships, but she still didn't confess the truth to me. Even when her world was falling apart, she kept lying. That's when I realized she was never going to come clean on her own. She was going to keep lying until she was forced to stop. It was time for the final phase of my revenge. By the end of April, Amber's life was unraveling in spectacular fashion. Her affair partner was facing termination for resume fraud, her best friends had cut her off, and HR was monitoring her every move at work. But she still didn't know I was behind any of it. The breaking point came when I discovered she was planning to leave me. I found the evidence by accident while looking for our insurance papers in her desk drawer. Hidden beneath a stack of old bills was a lease agreement for a downtown apartment, signed by both Amber and Brent, with a move-in date of June 1st. She was planning to abandon our marriage without even telling me. That night, I confronted her with the lease agreement. "What's this, Amber?" She looked at the paper and went pale. "Where did you find that?" "In your desk." "Care to explain why you're signing apartment leases with your coworker?" "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're planning to leave me for Brent." She started crying again, but this time I didn't comfort her. "I was going to tell you." "When? After you moved out?" "I didn't know how to bring it up. I knew you'd be upset." "Upset? Amber, you've been lying to me for months. You stole my laptop, used our joint account to buy gifts for another man, and now you're planning to abandon our marriage without even discussing it." Upset doesn't begin to cover how I feel. "I know I handled this badly, but I do love Brent. I want to be with him." "Fine, then be with him. But you're not going to sneak out in the middle of the night like a coward." I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made months earlier, her confession about the affair. "I've been documenting everything, Amber. Every lie, every deception, every betrayal. Your friends know the truth. HR knows the truth. Soon everyone will know the truth." Her tears stopped. "You recorded me? Without my permission? Minnesota is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of." "You coward! You've been sabotaging me this whole time. I've been exposing you. There's a difference. Brent was right about you. He said you were a pathetic loser who would never amount to anything." That stung, but it also confirmed what I'd suspected. They'd been mocking me behind my back for months. "Well, this pathetic loser just destroyed both of your careers and reputations. How does that make you feel?" She stared at me with a mixture of hatred and fear. "What do you want?" "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. I want everyone to know what kind of person you really are." "And then what? You'll forgive me and we'll work things out?" I laughed. "Amber, our marriage has been over for months. I'm just making sure it ends on my terms, not yours." The next day, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. I called Amber's sister, her parents, and her closest relatives, and told them everything. I sent them copies of the evidence I'd gathered, photos, recordings, bank statements, and the lease agreement. I also sent copies to Pinnacle Marketing's executive team, along with a detailed timeline of how the affair had affected workplace dynamics and potentially violated company policy. But the coup de grace was yet to come. I knew that Amber and Brent were planning to attend the company's annual spring gala the following weekend, a black tie event where all the employees and their spouses celebrated the year's achievements. I also knew that Amber was planning to use the event to publicly debut her relationship with Brent, now that his divorce was finalized, and she was planning to leave me. What she didn't know is that I'd already RSVP'd for the event as her spouse. The gala was held at the Marriott downtown, in a ballroom filled with Pinnacle Marketing's employees and their families. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a small USB drive. I found the event coordinator and explained that I had a special presentation to show in honor of my wife's achievements at the company. The coordinator was happy to help, especially when I offered to make a donation to the company's charity fund. Amber arrived an hour later with Brent, both of them dressed to the nines and looking like the perfect power couple. She nearly fainted when she saw me standing by the bar. "Nick, what are you doing here?" "It's the company's spouse event, isn't it?" "I'm your spouse." "You can't be here, not after what you've done." "What I've done? Amber, I haven't done anything except expose the truth." Brent stepped forward, trying to look intimidating in his expensive tuxedo. "I think you should leave, Nick. You're not welcome here. Actually, I'm exactly where I belong. See, I have something special planned for tonight." Before they could respond, the event coordinator announced that dinner would be followed by a special presentation from one of the company's employees. During the meal, I watched Amber and Brent squirm in their seats, knowing something was coming but not knowing what. Other employees kept glancing at them and whispering. Word of Brent's resume fraud and their workplace affair had spread throughout the company. After dessert, the lights dimmed and a screen descended from the ceiling. Ladies and gentlemen, the coordinator announced, we have a special presentation tonight about workplace integrity and personal accountability. The presentation began with a timeline of Amber and Brent's affair, complete with photos, text messages, and audio recordings. Everything was presented factually, without editorial comment, but the implications were clear. The room fell silent as the evidence unfolded on screen. Bank records showing Amber using joint marital funds to buy gifts for Brent. Photos of her car parked in his neighborhood during supposed work meetings. Audio of her confessing to the affair and lying about it. The final slide was a photo of their lease agreement, with a caption reading, "Some people believe in working through problems. Others believe in running away from them." When the lights came back up, Amber and Brent were gone. They'd slipped out during the presentation, but not before everyone in the company had seen the truth about their relationship. I stood up and addressed the room. I want to thank Pinnacle Marketing for giving me the opportunity to share this information with all of you. As you can see, workplace affairs don't just affect the people involved, they affect everyone around them. I hope this serves as a reminder that actions have consequences, and that integrity matters both in business and in life. The room erupted in applause. I walked out of the hotel and into the cool spring night, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts from Amber, but I ignored them all. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Amber moved out the following week, taking only her personal belongings. The lease agreement with Brent was voided. Apparently, his termination from Pinnacle Marketing had left him unable to afford the rent. I heard through Sam that Brent had moved back in with his mother and was working at a call center for half his previous salary. Amber found a job at a smaller marketing firm, but her reputation in the industry was permanently damaged. As for me, I kept the house, kept my job, and kept my dignity. Most importantly, I kept the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure everyone knows the truth. I never saw Amber or Brent again, but I didn't need to. The humiliation game was over, and I had won. The end.